All right. We're picking up here on page 114 of The Imitation of Christ, a book written by or attributed to Thomas à Kempis. I've read some articles saying that probably one of his disciples wrote it. So that's neither here nor there. But we're on chapter 7, How Grace is to be Kept Close through the Virtue of Humility. Yeah, interesting. Grace. Hello, Dominique.
Hi, everyone. Happy evening.
Oh, I love that. Happy evening to you. All right, so we're on page 114, chapter 7, How Grace is to be Kept Close through the Virtue of Humility. Now, interesting, because we often think that we have to get God's grace, like God is like dangling it just out of reach, and we kind of have to jump through some hoops to get it. But it's interesting that grace is kept close here through the virtue of humility, which means grace is only as far away from you as you are too proud to grab it, to accept it, to take grace. As much as you think that you can make it on your own or do it on your own or get yourself fixed or realize God or whatever it is you think that you're on about, that's how far grace is. So if you've come to the place in your life where you know, boy, I'm afraid this can't happen any other way, then by the grace of my beloved, then that grace will fall on you. You will know. Mother will pick up you and carry you home. So we read the first point last week, and number 2 here says, there are many people who, when things do not go well for them, soon become impatient or lazy, and so set themselves back. Our life is not always ours to control. It is for God to dispose this as he wills, to give comfort when he wills, as much as he wills, and to whom he wills, and no more, right? And immediately when we think that, we start interpreting that in human terms. But we have to understand that, yes, God may, in fact, have all of these options, but he always chooses the option that best manifests love. So if he's withholding you something from you and it hurts you, you can always immediately know that it's for your good in some way. And that's the challenge of spiritual practice, is to find that way. That's how we keep moving. That's why we suffer in this world. That's why things are not super comfortable and why we very rarely get everything we want, because that's not beneficial to us. What's beneficial is finding truth. And when we're stepping out of that truth, the result is suffering. When we're taking refuge in anything but the divine love, we hurt. And that hurting is, just like Sri Nisargadatta says, is meant to bring us back, meant us to ask questions, to look interiorly. Where is the love in this? How do I see the love in this, in this current situation? Or what am I attached to? That's the better question, because all suffering comes from an attachment. An attachment is saying something is you that is not you. Right? It's applying your eye to something that isn't valid. So our life is not always under our control. It's actually never under our control, according to Ramakrishna. That we're not the doers. That this life really is a wheel of samsara, just kind of tumbling down the hill of life. It's the body mind following their karmas, following their cause and effects, and getting caught. And we stay in such close proximity to them and have such instant access to them that we mistake them for ours. We mistake them as a description of ourselves, as an extension of ourselves. Some impotent people, through an indiscreet desire to have the grace of devotion, have damaged themselves. Is Priya? I think Priya's coming. Did I get that right? Yes, here we go. Okay. Hello, Priya.
Hi, Swami.
Welcome on board.
Thank you.
We're on page 114 in this book, in this version.
Mind reader.
So some impudent people, through an indiscreet desire to have the grace of devotion, have damaged themselves, for they wished to do more than they were able. Not taking into account the limit of their gift or their own weakness, they chose to follow their inclinations rather than good judgment. And because they presumed to undertake more than was pleasing to God, they soon lost the grace they already had. Okay, that's a little bit cloudy in there. Really, what he's pointing at here is this notion when your ego takes charge, when you're trying to do things beyond your star, do things that are bigger. And usually the reason for doing something bigger than you are is to be noticed as bigger than you are, to be seen, right? You choose not to do I'm always impressed with the person at the DC Center who cleans the downstairs bathrooms, in the basement, because no Swami is going to catch you going in and out of there with your cleaning rag. And so it's truly an act of faith, You go and you clean the bathrooms, ain't nobody going to say thank you because nobody's going to know that you did it. And so, but if you choose to do the ones that are just outside the front door of the temple upstairs, everybody's going to know, and everybody will notice who's cleaning the bathroom. And so it's like that. When egoism gets into your devotion, and you start wanting to be noticed, even by God or by anybody else, look, look at my works, look at my devotion, look at the depth of my spirit, right? Then when that begins happening, we lose grace, not because grace actually leaves us, but because ego is the veil of Maya. It prevents us from seeing or knowing God. You cannot rely on God when you're lost in egotism. You cannot be obedient to the divine principle within if you're being obedient to the mental principle of personality and lower self, following the desires of body and mind and finding those to be the things that motivate and activate you in this world. Right? So we soon lose the grace that we already had. Basically what that means, we lose sight of it. We can't take comfort in it because we're unaware of it now. They were left poor and abandoned, for they thought they had built a nest in heaven for themselves. In this way, they were taught not to rely on their own strength, but to humbly trust in God and his goodness, right? And this is where that whole dichotomy takes place. In Christianity, they take our nature to be the fallen nature. And so there's always this emphasis on a humility through defacement of the self or through a hatred of the lower self. And that's quite hard to digest because it's not mentally healthy to identify as fallen and then to take the humility of it. It's much better to know that you're fallen, but that is not your nature. Your nature was what you were before you chose to live according to the senses, to the mind. And so we know that we're beautiful because we have the image of God within. We know that we're beautiful because look at all the effort that all of the world's religions that God has put together are all trying to reach us, trying to encourage us, trying to inform us of love, of our nature, of the divine potential that's within us. So, did you have a question, Priya, or no? Okay. I thought I said something that had terribly disappointed you. All right. And so when we go into egoism, we're abandoned, or that's how it feels to us, that we've been abandoned. In the reality, we did the abandoning. We abandoned our divine principle. We abandoned God in that. So we were left poor and abandoned, for they thought they had built a nest in heaven for themselves. In this way, they were taught not to rely on their own strength, right? Because you really have no strength. Everything that you have is a gift of the divine. Your Satchitananda, your body, your mind, your samskaras, the experiences you have, all of them are God working with you. God working with you, yes. It can take on other forms. God expressing through you trying to teach you to become a pure channel so that no egoism, no sense of desire will refract the love into something impure, right? So that you can love with an equanimous nature. You can love freely, regardless of whether the folks around you deserve it or not. Beginners and those inexperienced in the way of the Lord may easily fall into error and be deceived unless they seek the counsel of the wise. Right? And this is the role of the guru, somebody outside of our ego who can give us the truth, who's not afraid to tell us, no, that's not the right way, or you're being arrogant, or why is it that you chose to clean the upstairs bathrooms all the time and never clean the downstairs bathroom? That person that comes to you and puts you on notice, stuff that your ego wouldn't see. No, this is a good practice for you. I know you don't like it. I know it's hard for you. I know it's painful for you, but you need to do it. So do it. That's the guru. That's the wise counsel he's talking about here, something outside of your ego sphere. Many of us are very defensive these days toward the idea of a guru, which with good reason, I have to say. There's a lot of distrustful things happening out there. So that's why you wait until you find someone who you trust, someone who you respect, someone who you think could take you forward. And you trust that person. If you don't have that person, not to fret, ask the divine for that person, and the divine will manage that for you. We'll get it arranged for you in the right time. So, but if they choose to follow their own judgment and refuse to be dissuaded from it, rather than take the advice of those with more experience, their end will be endangered. Seldom are the wise in their own estimation humble enough to allow others to guide them. Right? So it's this being real, being not letting us get a higher image of ourselves. Not to get an image of ourselves. Period. Let's just leave it at that. Don't have an image of yourself. What use is it? You are what you are, regardless of what you think about it. So why bother? Just be in the moment and be free. Don't cognate any of that stuff. Don't get caught upstairs here. Always be aware of the moment, live in the moment, and take all of the elements of the moment together and create something beautiful. That's all you have to know to get through life. That's all you have to do. And draw near to the divine. Of course, it's the divine that will teach you beauty, or has taught you beauty, and who will inspire beauty in you. So take that path. Don't worry about what your thoughts about yourself are. There's no need to think about that at all. It's neither for you nor against you. Just be. And learn through that being what you are. Not what you're doing, but what you're being everywhere. Therefore, it is better to have a little learning with humility than great learning with self-complacency. It is better to have a little learning with grace than much learning which fills you with pride. Right? And that is true. That's true. It is possible to navigate both strains. I wouldn't say that this is a prohibition from getting knowledge, or from educating yourself, or even being greatly educated. But I would say that it's an understanding that the brain you're using to get educated is a gift to you from the Lord. You didn't build it. You didn't decide its IQ level. You didn't decide anything about it. It's not yours. And so own your humility through that, through the fact that it's impossible for you to take credit that anything your body does, because you didn't make it, and you can't make it. And if it broke, you couldn't fix it. So why take, it's like becoming proud of your lawn because you've got a good lawnmower. Like, lawnmower did it. It's like a beautiful person, a good-looking person who gets proud of their good looks. What did you have to do with the way you look? Absolutely nothing. That's the way you were born. That's the way it is. Now, are you going to be egotistical about it? Well, that's just stupid. That's just ill-informed. So really take that route. Understand that all that you have is a gift of grace from your beloved. That's enough. You don't have to be ashamed. You don't have to be downtrodden. You don't have to beat yourself up. Just know everything I have is a gift. I had nothing to do with my birth. I have nothing to do with my talents and my gifts that I've been given. I had nothing to do with the advantages or disadvantages I was born into. It's simply up to me to take what's given and to do the best that I can to manifest beauty, to manifest love with that, to employ the image of God within, to turn the moment gold, to make the very best of it that I can. Those persons are indiscreet who give themselves over to joy, forgetting their former desolation and the humble fear of God, which fears to lose the grace that was offered. Okay, wait a minute. Let me read this here. Those persons are indiscreet who give themselves over to joy. Okay, so when you give yourself over to joy, you give up your self-control. So someone that's just a little bit too happy for show, perhaps, putting on a demonstration of happiness rather than being happy. I don't know. Forgetting their former desolation and the humble fear of God, which fears to lose the grace that was offered. Can we just move on to the next one? It sounds like here he's asking me to remember my desolation and a fear of God, which fears to lose the grace that was offered. If you're going to give me grace as a free gift and then I have to live the rest of my life in fear of losing it, I'm afraid you can keep your grace, because it wasn't grace. That's a lie. And not only was it not grace, it didn't come from unconditioned love either, because you're slapping conditions on it. Here he's slapping conditions on it after the fact. All right. I know we should be looking at Christian scripture through Christian eyes, but sometimes we go past the edge here. That grace is always yours and forever yours, and the love of God is unconditioned. And we use those facts not to take license and live an ill life. We take those facts to nurture our inspiration and our devotion, because the only reason to love God more than anything else is because God loves you more than anything else. And you can take rest in that and knowledge in that whatever condition you're in, whatever you've done, whatever you've thought you've done, whatever you've been or become, there is nothing that will remove you from the potential, from the grace of God. All you have to do is accept it full-heartedly, though, and full-hearted acceptance always ends in inspiration. An inspiration to give back, not because you have to, and not because you're going to lose what you got, but to give back because you've been loved. You've been loved like you've never been loved before. And that's where you live from. That's how you touch the beloved. That's how you approach the beloved. And that's how you keep yourself humble. And that's how you enjoy that humility. Humility is not a source of pain, shouldn't be a source of pain. They also are far from being virtuous, who, in time of trouble or adversity, give themselves up to despondency and do not place their confidence in me as they ought. Okay, that's true there. That it's not virtuous to be overcome by hardship, by things not being in your favor. Your virtue is demonstrated by your ability and your tenacity in making something beautiful out of what may not be beautiful or may not seem beautiful, right? That's what good karma is. Good karma is being able to make something beautiful that might not have seemed so beautiful. It's like a person who becomes a star in the Special Olympics after they've lost their ability to walk. They took something that might not have been such a beautiful thing for them, and they turned it into something beautiful. That's good karma. That's what we live to do, to take whatever we have and to create something beautiful out of it. And if the more difficult it is to do that, by the less you've been given, the more beautiful the outcome is. The more beautiful the outcome is. So it's not a good idea when things aren't going your way, or when you feel challenged, or when you're being corrected by the Lord, to get despondent, to disconnect, to give up, and to forget to place your strength and inspiration in the grace of God. That's where it all comes from. If your inspiration is coming from the fact that things are going your way, that's fine. It's a beautiful thing. The problem is that it ain't going to last long, because it isn't long times in this world that things go our way. They quite often are going different ways, going painful ways. And in the midst of that, that's the beauty of the divine. It's unchanging, that divine absolute, Brahman, God without form, the unchanging, unmanifest principle of divine love, divine wisdom, and the beauty of being. They who feel too secure in time of peace become dejected and fearful in time of conflict and temptation. If only you could remain humble and little in your own opinion, and keep the motions of your soul under control, you would not quickly fall into presumption or despair. What are your thoughts on this idea of the motions of your soul? To keep the motions of your soul under control.
It sounds like desires and attachments, like that just come up or something.
Yes, I think that's true. But that's also, I would agree with that. But I'm confused because I've never heard motion being attributed to soul.
So, yeah.
So, well, let's just kind of ride over that. We'll just say keep the motions of yourself, your lower self, your body mind, your attachments to body mind, keeping attachments to body mind under control. Maybe. When you receive the gift of fervor, it is wise to consider how you will act when that fervor is withdrawn. Then when this happens, think that it may soon return to you, which for my glory and your warning, I have withdrawn from you for a time. Okay. Yeah, see, this is all being written from the human perspective, the perspective of a human being. Because God cannot withdraw from you in any way. It's impossible. I mean, if God is existence and you exist, you kind of need that to be a pretty chummy arrangement. If God is love and you're loving, if God placed his image within you at your creation, that would be quite a trick to pull away from you. What happens is we get clouded, we get egotistical, or we get attached, and then we can't see God anymore. So it's more a result of our blindness by looking at other things or by depending on other things more than it is God pulling away from us. So it's better, I think, even though this, from a perspective, this could be true from an observational perspective, that God is far away from us, or we're having a dry period, God is far away, and we describe it that way. Experientially, that's how we feel about it. But in reality, it's an impossibility. And that's how we get out of that situation, is by reminding ourselves, no, this is impossible. God can't be far from me. There must be something in me that's blocking my view, some attachment in me, some identity that isn't proper or correct. Some desire that isn't helpful. And so in that sense, we can reclaim our confidence. We can reestablish ourselves in the presence of God. Whereas if God could actually withdraw from us, what do we know about the mind of God? We could do nothing about that, right? If God chooses to withdraw from you, what do you have to do in there? You just, oh my God, what do I do? Right? Because you don't know the mind, you don't know the reason, you don't know what's going on. Whereas if we understand the promise, that I'm always with you, then we know that the promise is in our vision, the promise is in our attention, the promise The problem is in our inability to see properly. Right? This is a very difficult chapter for me. It's bringing up all of the things right here. This next one, when I put you to this test, it is more profitable for you than always to have the things go according to your will. Right? And when he says test, I prefer to think that he's, it's more of an exercise. He's putting more weight on your barbell so that you get stronger, right? Because there is no reason for God to test you. If God is omniscient, what's he going to find out by testing me? Right? If God is omnipresent, omniscient, all-knowing, everywhere present, always perfect, then what's going to happen with a test? Test shows a lack of trust. But we know that pure love always trusts, always hopes, always believes. So this is another impossibility here. God does not put us to the test. He turns up the heat, right? Not to test us, but because he believes we can do it. He makes it more difficult, not because he wants to see if we'll fail, but because he knows we can't fail. Because he's our strength, and he's our refuge, and he's our love, and he's our goal, and he's everything to us. There is no testing in a love relationship, right? There is no testing in a love relationship. If you were married to somebody and you set up a test, which I've read about and heard about, you don't love that person. You don't trust that person. And if your partner does that to you and demonstrates that kind of lack of trust, then where's your trust going to come from if it's not inspired by their trust? Right? You've got to trust each other. You've got to hold on to each other. You can't make up tests. You can talk openly and speak frankly about things, but setting up little make-believe tests behind the scenes, nobody wants to live with a partner like that. Nobody wants to be around that kind of energy, right? If you don't trust somebody, tell them, I find it hard to trust you. Look what's going on. Look, I just don't know. Maybe it's me, maybe it's you. Let's talk about it because I love you and it hurts me, right? That's how you deal with that. So when I put you to this test, it is more profitable for you than always to have things go according to your will. The merits of persons are not to be highly esteemed because such persons have many visions or spiritual consolations, or because they are well versed in the scriptures, nor even in their being in a more elevated position, right? So the merits of people are not to be highly esteemed. Why? Because what we're looking at in each other is that image of the divine, that divine principle. That's what it's the same as the devotional person saying, I see God in everyone. I see Jesus in everyone. Just like Jesus says, I tell you the truth. When you gave the least of these a glass of water, you gave it to me. Right? It's seeing that divine in everyone. And that's why we respect each other, right? That's why we love each other. That's how we approach an equanimous love for everyone, because we see that God in each other first. And when Ramakrishna had that untouchable guy walk into his room, and he fell, and Ramakrishna, God himself, fell down on his face and prostrated before the guy in respect, it's because he saw God in the untouchable. That's why he didn't treat him like an untouchable. Because when he stands up, the untouchable man is terribly offended. He thinks that by doing that Ramakrishna has heaped all kinds of bad karma on him. And he begins to complain to Ramakrishna about it. And Ramakrishna says, no, it's not like that. He says, you see, when you first walked in the room, I saw God only in you. And I bowed down and worshiped. It wasn't until a few minutes later that I saw the you that you see, that I saw the you that you expected me to see. You see, so that's what he's saying here. So we're not held in high respect or esteem because of our gifts, our abilities, our visions, our spiritual experiences, or whatnot. We hold each other in high esteem because the image of God is within each one of us, because God loves us. And if I am worthy of love, that I am worthy from God, I am worthy of love. right? Because I am that itself as well. So we're always bringing back that knowledge. Our pride should stand on nothing but the fact that we are children of the beloved. That's where we get our sense of value from. That is how we know that we're worthwhile. It's not performance-based. It's not performance-based. But if they are firmly grounded in humility and filled with charity, which that is the only way to do it, to know this image of God is your only value. That's why those parables, 3 of them in a row about the treasure of great value, find the pearl of great value. It's like it's worth everything else in your life. And this is the fact. That image of God within you is the thing that is worth everything. If they speak purely, if they seek purely the worship of God, looking upon themselves as nothing, and sincerely despising themselves, and if they desire to be despised by others, then they may really hope that they have advanced spiritually, and that in the end, oh my God, what a chapter. What a chapter. Let's see if we can kind of take the kinks out of here. Firmly grounded in humility, wonderful. Filled with charity, wonderful. If they seek purely the worship of God, wonderful. When you're in the presence, the natural response is worship. So really, it's just being aware of the presence of God always, is what he's pointing at there. Looking upon themselves as nothing, right? From an ego perspective. There is my non-existence in the presence of God, because I am that divine. And the only reason I think separate is because of ignorance. So I think of myself as nothing and sincerely despising. I'm not going to say themselves. I'm going to say despising the ego self, that self that sees itself independent of God, that self that wants to build its reputation on its doings and on its beings rather than on the presence of the beloved. So despising that self, right? And if they desire to be despised by others, in the sense that if they're egotistical, they want that being despised by others will break that egoism. So that's the value of that in that context. But this turns into some really, really, really weird stuff, really weird behaviors in people if it's not sussed out properly here. To go around wanting to be despised by others, what kind of person is that going to turn you into? You're going to start doing things to make people despise you. And I'm afraid that sort of happened, I would say. Then they may really hope that they have advanced spiritually, and that in the end, they will have the reward of God for all their labor. See, again, here they're equating the reward of God with all their labor. What happened to grace? Where did grace go? Anyway, we'll move past that. I'm not going to get weird about it like that. But the truth of the matter is, you are made of God, you are in God, you're filled with God, you are by nature God. It's egoism when you forget that nature, when you stop being aware of that constant presence and reality, that you start thinking that you're a body and you're a mind. And when you take that on, you are no longer manifesting your nature clearly. You're still manifesting your nature because there's nothing else for you to manifest, but you're manifesting it through the lens of egoism, which is going to be ugly. And that's the self that we despise, that mistake, the ignorance, the error. That's what we dislike. Nothing about ourself, the true self, is unlikable. Nothing about the true self is not worthy of pure love, in the sense of by divine right, by being a child of the beloved, right? And so when we are in an error, we do take on the others despising us. We take that on and accept it because of our confidence in the divine image within. We're unconcerned about that despicableness. And if we are concerned about it, that's evidence of egoism. And we should be happy for the treatment to them. So in that context, absolutely true. Absolutely good words here. That being despised by others is a great ego busting. And sometimes it is helpful, like when Vivekananda was, Ramakrishna stopped talking to him for a month, wouldn't even look at him, and Vivekananda was completely unfazed by that. He says, I come here because I love you. I don't come here because I want you to talk to me, or you have to treat me in a particular way. I'm here because I love you. And really, that's our goal. At the end of the day, all of this is saying that we're here because of love. And we should wrap ourselves tightly in that and live accordingly all the time. And the freedom of our grace is not our license. It's our inspiration to be the very highest and best approximation of our nature that we can be. Right? And now chapter 8 here. Chapter 8, on the lowly esteem of self in God's sight. Okay, we might be in some more trouble here, but we'll go through it carefully and kind of keep things aligned. Disciple, I will speak to you, Lord Jesus, I who am but dust and ashes. Absolutely true, right? We're made of the earth. And the body is food. Right? The body is food. It's made of all the things that you put in it. So he says, I will speak to you, Lord Jesus, I who am but dust and ashes. If I think myself any better, right? You stand opposed to me. And what is more, my own sins bear witness against me. This evidence I cannot deny. Right? Absolute truth. If I think that my approaching you is because of something that I've done or achieved or am independent of you, that's ego. And ego will keep you from realizing your nature. It will keep you from being able to draw close to the Lord. So he says, and if I do think of myself any better than dust and ashes, then non-existence in your presence, because you give me my presence, right? If I stand opposed, then you stand opposed to me. Right. In egoism, we oppose God. And so you can't oppose God and have not God have opposed you. But his opposition to you it's not personal about you. His opposition is to your egoism. And his only reason for doing so is because of his love for you. Not wanting you to suffer through that egoism, not wanting you to feel that separation caused by your egoism, by your thought. And so the man says that if I do think myself better, if I do actually think it's because who my ego self is, because of my doership, then you stand opposed to me. And what is more, my own sins, the own delusion that I would take a stand of being worthy in your presence will bear witness against me. This evidence I cannot deny. But if I humble myself, admit my insignificance, rid myself of all self-esteem, and regard myself as the mere dust that I am, then your grace will come to me, and the light of your understanding will enter into my heart, so that through perfect knowledge of my wretchedness, all self-esteem will be lost in the depth of my own nothingness. Right? Okay. That's true. But there's the use of my in that place is not proper. Yes, the ego self is wretched. Yes, ignorance is wretched. Yes, delusion is wretched. But the I, that which is really me, is never wretched, right? And so this is how we keep from breaking ourselves as a human, as a person, right? If you hate yourself, from where is the inspiration that's going to bring about your love and your service? Right? Where is that inspiration? It's in God alone. Right? Yeah. So it's the ego self again. In the paradigm that Christianity stems from, they count the self as the fallen self. That's who I am. Right? And from that perspective, all of this is true. But that perspective is not helpful all the way through. That perspective is helpful toward humility, but it's not helpful toward realization. It doesn't pick you back up again. There you show me what I truly am, what I have been, and what I have become. Okay, this is the ego self again. For I am nothing. That is true from the ego self perspective, and I did not know it. Left to myself, I realized then that I am nothing, and that all is weakness and imperfection. You see, as long if you tie yourself to that, if you tie yourself to weakness and you tie yourself to imperfection, then indeed weakness and imperfection will be what you become. Right? What you think, you become. So it's important that we just make this distinction, right? And I don't, yeah, anyway, I'm not going to get into it too much, but this idea of hatred of the self and being the weak sinner is not a healthy psychology, and it won't bring about your freedom. It will bring about a lot of self-hatred and a lot of vindictive behaviors ultimately. Okay, but he says now he's going to, so we'll accept it from the perspective that he's talking about ego self here. So we'll follow that, but I remind you that you're not the ego self, that you are the divine self behind it. And it's a matter of constantly remembering that and not identifying, not tying your eye to the fallen self, to the self that's identified with body, mind. Okay, now he's going to bring around the positive side, the side that really is going to be beautiful. But the moment you look upon me, I soon become strong, and I'm filled with a new joy, right? A new strength and a new joy that comes from the presence and awareness of the presence of God, of the divine. That without that, you are wretched, you're downcast, you're sad, you're caught up in the world. Things are up and down, and depression forms and swirls around inside. But the moment that God looks at us, or the moment, I'm going to switch that around because God is never not looking at you. The moment that you look at God, the moment you recognize the presence, the moment you become aware of the presence, then you become strong. Then you become filled with a new joy. How wonderful it is that I am so quickly lifted up and so lovingly supported by you. I, who of myself tend downward to earthly things. That is true. The self, our self, as we are, without God, without the awareness of self, the mind is outgoing in its nature. So we begin to describe ourselves from the outside in. We take on attributes. We become concerned about our doings, and we define ourselves by our doings. And the end of that will always be arrogance or a broken self-esteem, right? But if we learn to live in the awareness of who we are by nature, sons of God, if we learn to live by identifying with our qualities, the qualities of pure love, of wisdom and being, then great strength is awakened, right? And we are filled with a new joy and a new freedom and a new inspiration that truly revolutionizes what we are, how we manifest in this world. So, Lord, this next sentence is more true than anything. Lord, your love is the cause of this, which goes before me and helps me in all my necessities. It protects me from those grave dangers to which I am most prone to succumb. I have lost you and myself too by this disordered self-love. By seeking you again, I found both you and myself. See, this knowledge is there. It's just not always applied. Wonderful, right? So he says there, I have lost you and myself too by my disordered self-love, right? By my wrong thinking, my love of body, my love of mind and its attributes. By my disordered self-love, by seeking you again, by throwing those things away, not identifying with them, not building my self, my sense of self off of those things, then I find what? Both you and myself, because they are truly one and the same. From now on, therefore, I will make myself completely insignificant and more earnestly seek you. For you, Lord Jesus, deal with me far above what I deserve, indeed far above all that I dare to ask or hope for. That is that unconditioned love. That is that infinite grace that comes from the divine. And that indeed is where we find all of our value, not in our doings, not in our accomplishments, not in our ideas, not in our anything that changes. Blessed are you, O Lord, in all your works, for though I am unworthy of any good, you continually surround me with your kindness, which is extended even to those who are ungrateful to you or have turned away from you. Okay. So they're talking about that unconditioned principle here again. So they were withholding it a page earlier, but now they're talking about how it doesn't go away, regardless of whether you turned away from him or not. So this is more of that pure love that we're talking about, right? You continually surround me with your kindness, which is extended even to those who are ungrateful to you or have turned away from you. Lord, please turn us back to you again so that we may become grateful. Humble and devout, for you are our help. You are our salvation, and you are the strength of our body and our soul. Interesting. Anybody have any statements so far or questions or anything? Wondering about something? Uncomfortable with anything? No? All right. Chapter 9. How all things are to be referred to God, our last end. Christ speaking. My child, if you desire true happiness, then I must be the ultimate goal of all your works. Right? What is he? He is love. So we're expressing love for the sake of love. Those are the works that bring true happiness, that bring true contentment to life. I must be the ultimate goal of all your works. Too often your affections are inclined toward yourself, right? To yourself, meaning your body and your mind. And those things that we consider ourselves in delusion, in attachment. Your affections are inclined toward your body. So you want to serve your body, giving it its pleasures, right? And the body must always take from something else in order to get. And so it causes selfishness. It is selfishness. Too often are your affections are inclined toward yourself and other creatures. Direct them toward me, toward the divine. Know that it is God behind everything beautiful, that it is God behind everything you desire, that it is God behind everything that you love, so that you don't fall in love with objects which will always end and disappear. Direct them toward me, and they will be purified. Indeed, what is purification? It's the removal of me and mine. The idea of body-mind gets removed when you direct everything toward that love for its own sake, when you understand that is your nature. If you're set yourself as the end of your work, right? If you're working to get rich or to get pleasures or to get big houses or big cars or big families or whatever else there might be, if you set yourself as the end of your work, you will soon lose heart and become dry. Why? Because everything that you achieve will be lost. So of course you're going to be dry. Of course you're going to lose heart. You know, you spend all that time building a big, beautiful house and it burns down. You spend all that time getting a big, beautiful company and it crashes, or your competitors win. You know, yes, in this world, everything you work for ends. You spend all that money for a new car. Take it out for a drive, it gets a ding. And suddenly it's not a new car anymore. It's like, it's easy to get disheartened that way. Refer all things to me, for I have given all. Consider all things as flowing forth from my sovereign goodness, and return all things to me as to their source. Right? You have no choice in this, really. He's telling you, just don't be stupid. because everything that you get, right? All that you could ever have is going to go back the day you die. It all goes back. It all gets dispersed. It's not yours, right? So live accordingly. Be aware there's nothing for you to get in this world. Your nature is to shine, to give, right? That's your nature. So do that in this world. Understand you didn't get here. You didn't come here to get anything, unless it's a couple of buckets of potting soil. And nobody wants that. From me, as from a living spring, both small and great, poor and rich, draw their living water. They who serve me freely and willingly will receive grace for grace, but they who glorify themselves or take delight in anything else beside me will not be established in perfect joy, will not, nor will their hearts be enlarged, but they will be frustrated and confined in many ways. That's the deluded life, the life of bondage, right? To not know the infinite nature of self, to not know the nature of yourself in this world, that you're here to shine, to express, to emanate your divine nature, that's the way to a fulfilling life. If you think anything else, if you think that you're here for enjoyment, if you think that you're here to achieve, if you think that you're here for anything, right, that's going to be of egoism. You are here for one purpose alone, to live. And living is what? Manifesting. And manifesting is what? What you are. And what are you? You are love. You are wisdom. You are. You are. Period. So you see, if you live from me as from a living spring, both small and great, rich and poor, draw living water. So if it's through the presence that your joy comes, through the awareness of the divine presence within, if that's where your joy is coming from, then you're drawing living water, right? And from that, those who serve me freely and willingly will receive grace for grace. But those who don't do that, those who are finding their joy in their accomplishments, finding their joy in their job, finding their joy in how much money they make or the power that they have, if that's where you take your joy, he says you're not going to be established in perfect joy. Why? Because those things are temporary. They're transient. Sometimes they'll be there and sometimes they won't. And if you base your joy on them, sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're not, right? You won't be established in perfect joy, nor will your hearts be enlarged, right? Because you'll be starving. You'll just be constantly hungry. This world can't feed you. And if you're going to this world for that food, to fill yourself, to be content, it's never going to happen. You'll never have enough even for yourself. That's why super rich people are still going to work. That's why super rich people still want more money. We've got people in this world right now who have more money than most of humanity has ever even dreamed of. And yet they're still desperately trying to make more. Take the clue. You're never going to get enough. There is no filling your hungers by the material things in this world. But those who glorify themselves or take delight in anything else besides me will not be established in perfect joy. Their hearts will not be enlarged, but they will be frustrated, and they will be confined in many ways, right? Be confined in many ways. No, I can't go there right now. I've got to take care of this. No, I can't do that because I have to do this. These things hem you in. Therefore, do not think that you are virtuous, nor attribute virtue to anyone, but give all credit to God. Is that not what we've been saying? Right? That is the truth. So we'll just ignore the paragraph on the other page where he was talking about the opposite. Do not think that your virtue comes from you or from anyone, but give all credit to God, without whom human beings have nothing. Right? Well, exactly. Without whom human beings aren't. Right? Existence isn't. Love isn't. Being isn't. If God isn't. Give all credit to God, without whom human beings have nothing. I have given all, and I have all referred back to me, and I strictly require your gratitude for what I have given. Well, strictly require also translates as I put that naturally within you, because that's part of your divine nature. Part of your divine nature, if you are living accordingly, will be gratitude. You'll be gracious. You'll feel gracious. That's the normal thing. This is the truth by which all vainglory is driven away. If heavenly grace and true charity enter into your heart, there will be no room for envy, no narrowness of heart, nor will self-love rule over you. Self-love would be your egoism. For the charity of God overcomes all and will expand and set on fire the powers of your soul. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. If heavenly grace, right, the grace of God, and true charity, true love, enter into your heart, there will be no room for envy, because certainly there's nothing to envy. If you've got grace and pure love, you're the King of Kings right there. No narrowness of heart, right? Your heart will be broad and full and rich and overflowing. You have plenty to give, inspiration to give. Nor will self-love rule in you. Your ego will not have any power if you are living in the true love and the infinite grace of the divine within you. For the charity of God overcomes all and will expand and will set on fire the powers of your soul. Only life by that inspiration, life in the face of pure love, life in the face of an unconditioned love, life in the face of an infinite grace, life in the face of your beloved, will set on fire the powers of your soul. There is no limit to what that inspiration can accomplish, of what can be done. Right? If you understand rightly, you will rejoice only in me, and in me alone you will place your confidence. For no one is good but God alone, and he alone is to be honored above all, and in all things he shall be blessed. Shall he be blessed? So, well, it's quite a wrestling there, but it ends in a beautiful form. It ends coming back to the truth that we know. The other ones are just ways that it might look along the way, but are not, or shouldn't, but really shouldn't be presented as the way things are.